Hi, welcome to Overthinking Entrepreneur. I'm Megan, and I've had a successful online business for a few years now, and I think I overthought probably about 90% of my decisions along the way. Honestly, I just overthought whether I should say 90% or pretty much every decision in this intro. So if you find that relatable, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I will help you get out of overthinking and into action so that your online business can finally start growing. We are officially into summer now and rolling into kind of peak vacation season for a lot of people. And so today I want to answer the question, should you work your business while you're on vacation? And this was actually a request for a podcast episode, and I thought it was a great topic. It's so relevant, and I have a few different things that I kind of want to walk you through, helping you decide whether you should work or whether you should take the time off, kind of how to prepare for that time off, and then some things that you can do while you're on your trip if you want to. So let's dive in and get started, because I think that this is going to be a really helpful topic if you have a vacation planned. And if you do, I would love for you to let me know. You can message me on Instagram or on Facebook, or even leave a review on the podcast and let me know. That's the one thing I don't like about the podcast is you can't really comment on an episode. We don't have any vacations on our calendar currently. My husband started a new job and is still pretty low in the PTO department. So hopefully next year we'll have a nice vacation planned. But if you have a vacation planned this summer or anytime, should you work your business or should you take that time off? So I think the first thing that you really want to keep in mind is, how long is your trip going to be? If it's a week or less, you can 100% take that time off and not worry about it. If it's a little bit longer, then I think that you need to kind of just think about your business, how long the trip is, your goals, and kind of some other things. So if it's nice and short and sweet, 1 week is not going to be a big deal for you to miss 1 week in your business. And for me, trying to figure out how to work while I'm on vacation at the same time, it's just not worth it. And I often set out with great intentions. I remember when I went to Disney World, this was years ago at this point, but this was in the height of when I was going live every day. And I was like, I'm going to go live from Disney. It's going to be so fun. It'll be so cool. I can find great spots. Well, first of all, it was really hard to find a spot because we were there right around Christmas time and it was packed. So it was really hard to find a spot where I had decent Wi-Fi and it wasn't just crowded with people. But also, I just wanted to enjoy that time with my family. Once I got there, I was not in business mode. And some people, I think, don't deal with this as much, but I definitely am much more in business mode when I'm at home in my normal routine than when I'm out of my house. So that's one thing that I think you want to look at too, is how realistic is it? It's one thing to have all these plans of I'm going to work on my trip, but is that what's really going to happen? I think you need to think about, who are you going to be with? If, for example, you're going on a trip to a business conference with business friends, yeah, you're probably going to work and it's not going to seem weird at all because you're there with business friends. If you're going on a family vacation and staying in a big Airbnb with 15 kids around, it's probably going to be a lot harder to work your business. So I think it depends on where you're going and who you're going to be on the trip with as well. But some other things that you want to really think about would be, why did you start your business? Many of us started our business with the goal of freedom, having that flexible time, being in charge of our own schedule. And I don't know about you, but feeling like I have to work on a week-long vacation does not make me feel in charge of my time or in charge of my schedule. Now, if I was going on a trip for 3 months, obviously that's different. But if we're talking 1 week or less, to me, a reason why I started my business was that I wanted to feel a little bit more in control of my time. And feeling like I can't step away for even a week does not serve the ultimate goal of why I started my business. And then you also want to think about, what are your goals? If you are in a season right now, like a big growth momentum season, it might be more worth it to work while you're on vacation than if you are not pushing for huge growth right now. So I think that really depends. What are your goals in general? We have such a wide variety of people in my audience, which I love. Some of you really just want to make some product sales and, you are in this for a lot of other reasons. And yes, you want those customers, but you don't necessarily want to have this massive business. But then some of you really do want to have the massive business. And I think that you just need to acknowledge that those are two different goals, and what you need to do to accomplish them is going to be pretty different. So thinking about what your goals are, what kind of season are you in with your business right now? And is it going to be a problem? And that's the next thing I want to ask yourself is, will anything truly crash and burn if you take 1 week off? A lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and like, I have to show up, I have to be consistent. And I always try and be mindful of this because obviously I teach consistency and I talk about the importance of it a lot. But when I say consistency, I do not ever mean that you can't ever take a single break. I mean that your more often than not mode is showing up and doing the things. I do not mean that you can't take a week off for your vacation. So thinking about, is anything really going to crash and burn if I take this time off? Is there anything massive that I'm working towards that the momentum would just be lost? Or is there anything time sensitive that has to happen during this week of my vacation and I just have to figure it out no matter what? And I've had this before. I did a challenge. Gosh, I almost said a year ago, but no, I was pregnant and my son is now 2. So time is so weird. Time has always been weird for me as an entrepreneur when I'm pretty in control of my days and, they kind of blur together. But since my son was born, I'm always like, when did that happen again? What year is it? But we went on a trip when I was very pregnant and I ran a challenge the week before and I needed to choose and announce the winner during our trip. And I was okay with that. And I made that choice and I knew that it was not going to be a big deal to do this one thing to pick this winner. And the timing of everything else with the challenge worked out that I wanted to do it before we went on the trip. So, I have had times where I have worked on a trip, but you just really want to ask yourself, like, am I putting this pressure? Am I feeling like I have to work, like I can't step away? And if you're feeling this, I want you to really take a step back and think about how you're growing your business. Because I know when I first got started, the things that I was being taught were not helping me build a sustainable business on a solid foundation that would keep growing. And so it did feel like, that was at the point in time where my sales were coming from cold messaging people very often. And I hated doing that, but I didn't know a better, I'm pretty sure I've told my story here. I didn't know a better way. Obviously, I don't do that now, and I help you avoid having to do that. But if you are feeling like you can't take time off, I think it's a good sign to reevaluate the way that you're growing your business. And again, if you have something like that challenge example I just gave you where, I needed to do that during the trip and it wasn't a big deal. But if you're feeling like your normal day-to-day activities can't miss a single week or your whole business will crash and burn, that is not a good sign. And that means we need to reevaluate how are you growing your business and build it in a way that's going to be a lot more sustainable for you. And then the other thing you want to ask is simply, do I want to work on my trip? Kind of like I talked about. Many times before the trip, I think I'll want to work and then I get there and I don't. So now I have learned that for the most part, I don't want to work when I'm on vacation, when I'm out of town, when I'm with my family and friends. And like I said, if it was a business trip, if it was some kind of retreat or a conference that I was attending, that would be different. But if I'm on a vacation with family and friends who don't have a business, I don't want to work. And I probably won't ever take a vacation long enough that I'd have to. I am such a homebody. Like, I enjoy traveling. I enjoy vacations. I enjoy trips, but I also really look forward to coming home. So for me, I probably won't ever take one long enough. I shouldn't say ever. Who knows? But it's not likely that I'll be taking a bunch of trips that pull me away long enough that I feel like I need to work during them. So asking, do I want to? And then, of course, the frequency of your trips. If this is a one-time thing and you rarely take time off like this, then I really encourage you to just enjoy your vacation and not feel like you have to work. If, on the other hand, you travel all the time, then you might need to make peace with working during your trips. If it's going to be, an every month thing, then you might need to figure out some easy ways that you can work while you're traveling or things that you can set up to work for you while you're traveling. So those are just some things you want to keep in mind. For the most part, I am team don't work on your vacation, but I think that there's a handful of exceptions. If you're in that growth season and you really want to keep pushing and you don't want to lose your momentum, if there's something time sensitive that needs done, if you simply just want to, you enjoy working and you don't mind, like it's easy for you to get up and take care of it in the morning before the rest of the family's up or whatever, if you want to, there's nothing wrong with it. If you really want to, just make sure that you want to and don't feel like you have to. And then, of course, how frequently you travel. If you don't travel very often, I'm very much on team relax and enjoy your trip. But if you are a very frequent traveler, then, you might need to just figure out how you can work during your travels. So if you have a trip coming up, here's some things that you can do to prepare. So the first thing you want to do is, obviously decide, are you going to be actively working during your trip or not? And even if you're not going to be actively working during your trip, that doesn't mean that your business has to go radio silent. There are some things that you can do to pre-schedule in advance. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I think that depending on where your business is at, depending on the different places that you tend to show up consistently, that it might be worth your while to pre-schedule some of your content if you can. So if you have an email list, it's really easy to pre-schedule emails to go out. So that might be something that you can easily just maintain your presence, write the email before your trip and not even worry about it, and it goes out. And I will tell you, it's really fun when a pre-scheduled email goes out and you see sales coming in when you're on a trip or out of town and you're not working. It's a lot of fun. So that could be an option. If you are actively using an email list or something like a text list, you can definitely pre-schedule, and you might even, depending on how your business is set up, like run some easy flash sales that you could get set up ahead of time, automate that content, and then watch some sales roll in while you're on your trip. And that way your business still continues moving forward. You made a little money on your trip, which is extra. I just feel like it's always fun to see sales come in from something you've created, but especially when you're out of town and not really thinking about it, it's even more fun. So that can be a really great way. Also, if you have a Facebook group, you are able to schedule content in there. So if you want to keep showing up in your Facebook group, you could easily schedule that content so that people will still see that coming out. And then depending on what other social media you're using, so if you're using like a business page, you could pre-schedule. If you are in professional mode, you can pre-schedule. So there's certain areas where you can pre-schedule. That being said, I am not saying that you have to pre-schedule. I am not saying that every place where you normally show up needs to still have content while you're on vacation, but it is an option and a way that you can spend some time up front and have, things keep running without you while you're enjoying your trip. So once you've decided what you want to pre-schedule, if there's any places where you normally show up but you're going to be absent, I would say let them know. Now, I know that some people do not want to post on social media or let people know that they're going to be out of town before their trip. This is not something that I personally worry about, but I've also been very careful to not, let people know where I live, and I don't have a ton of local people on my friends list either. So this is a decision that you'll have to make for yourself, and you might even get a little bit creative. You don't necessarily have to say that you'll be out of town, but you could say you have a busy week or that you just need a break, or there's lots of ways that you can approach this. But I think it's best to let people know, especially if you've been very consistent. If you haven't been, if you already show up sporadically, people might not even notice that you take a week off. But if you've been very consistent showing up in a space, then I think it's a good idea to just let people know that you're going to be quiet next week. And most people are very forgiving, and most people are very happy for you to take time off for your vacation, by the way. I think sometimes we get worried that people will be disappointed or that we have to always be available, we have to always be on because we have a business. Most people will be really happy for you to see that you're taking that time and that you're taking time away from your business, and they will be perfectly fine. So you can even let people know, like, hey, I'm going to be out of town next week, so if there's anything you've been wanting, if you're running low on anything, you need to get restocked, let's take care of that this week, or whatever, right? Like just letting people, giving them that quick heads up of what's going on so that you are letting people know, and then it's really no big deal to be quiet for a week. If it's going to be much longer, I think you do want to be careful of that because algorithms are very finicky and fickle, and more so than ever right now. If you take too much time away, it really can impact, like you're not going to come back to the same reach that you walked away from. But I think a week, pretty much everyone can get away with and pick back up. Like it's not a big deal. So anywhere where people are used to seeing you post or email or go live or your stories or whatever, if you're going to be quiet, I think just letting people know that can go a long way to just build that trust and with your audience, because they're not going to think, oh, she just fell off the face of the earth, or she didn't feel like it this week. She warned us. That's fine. And people are completely forgiving with that for the most part. And then you also can decide if there's any work that you do want to do on your trip. So like I said, you may decide that you want to work a decent amount on your trip. You may decide that you don't want to really work at all. Or there's also kind of another option where you could pinpoint certain times that might be good to work, but then take the rest of the time off. So for example, if you're getting on a plane, or if you're having a long car trip, or anything where you're going to have a lot of downtime and probably be bored anyway, that might be a really great time to write out some posts or work on that lead magnet you've been meaning to create or whatever, right? If there's any like writing projects that can easily be done, and you may or may not have access to the internet, especially if you're on a plane, although you can. I've really never paid for access to internet on a plane. I kind of like being forced to not be able to use it. So this could be a really great distraction-free time to finally write your first few blog posts, or finally set up that email welcome sequence, or finally, whatever that thing may be that could be done whether you have Wi-Fi or not. Now, you do not have to do this. I am not saying that this is something that needs to be done, but I'm just sharing a way that I have worked in the past, where I haven't done a lot of work other than this on trips. But I do think sometimes sitting on a plane, unless you're a reader, I do like to take books on planes. But if you're going to just be kind of twiddling your thumbs or watching a movie or, looking for something to do, this can be a good opportunity to get a little bit ahead on something. So if there's any of those times where you think you are going to have some downtime and you might want to get some work in, I think it can be good to just sort of plan that in advance so that you go into it with the mindset of, okay, I know this is what I'm going to do. You make sure you have all the stuff you'll need for it, anything like that. So again, it is 100% fine to not do any work like this. But if there's times on your trip that you think would be a good opportunity to catch up on some work, go ahead and decide that in advance so that you make sure that you have everything you need. Okay, so now you're on the trip. What should you do on the trip? So again, these are some ideas and just some general things to keep in mind while you're on your trip. But again, I'm going to keep repeating this because I really do think that for the most part, this is what most people should do in this situation. It is completely fine to do nothing, okay? You don't have to do any of these things. That being said, here's some of the things that I think are really easy and can be fun to do when you're on a trip, and you can decide for yourself if you want to do them or not. So my number one recommendation, especially if you're going somewhere interesting, I guess it depends what your trip is. If you're going on like a work trip and you're just going to be in a boring hotel and a boring conference room and that's really it, this might not apply as much. But if you're going somewhere interesting, take a bunch of photos. The more photos that you can take on your trip, you will have those to use when you get home. I am a huge proponent of having a photo stockpile. I'm actually doing a photo challenge this week to give you the training and the accountability to actually do a photo shoot and have a photo stockpile. And I have a PDF that walks you through doing this on your own if you happen to be listening to this far in the future. If you happen to be listening to this at the time it's coming out, jump into this challenge. You can jump in anytime this week. It's not a daily challenge. It just has to be done by the end of the week. So you can still totally jump in if you want some accountability for that. But having a huge stockpile of photos is a lifesaver. Let me just tell you, how many times have you gone to, maybe you wrote a post or you have an idea, and then you realize you don't have a good photo to use and you don't feel like snapping one in the moment for whatever reason. And it's frustrating. Then you're hunting around for a photo. I also think having really interesting variety photos, like a lot of times we kind of get in a rut and we take our photos in the same place. Like so many of my photos are in my office. People are so used to seeing that wall color, so used to seeing those backgrounds. And sometimes it just doesn't grab their interest anymore. Think about when you've seen the same, not that your photos are a commercial, but think about like the first time you see a new commercial on TV, it might grab your eye. But then like the 15th time you see that same commercial, you're like, yeah, this again. I think having that variety really goes a long way. And you can do this at home with the photo shoot like I'm teaching. But when you're out of town, it's a really great opportunity. Like if you spend just a little bit of time walking around, let's say you're going out to dinner and you're walking in like a cool downtown area, you can either take a tripod or have a friend or someone do it for you. Just have them snap some photos of you in front of a cool brick wall and maybe some art and sitting on some stairs and, maybe some palm trees or something different than what your home environment looks like. The more photos of just you that you can easily, quickly snap while you're on your trip, you'll be so glad that you have those when you get home. And a lot of times you're doing this anyway. And so it can be really easy to just, hey, would you take one of just me? Just take a couple, and get those done so that you'll have them when you get home. That is one thing I tend to do even if I'm not on a working vacation, is take some photos, because you're never going to be mad. You're never going to be like, oh, I have so many great photos to use. Like you're never going to be annoyed by that. You're only going to be grateful. Next thing, keeping up with your stories. So if you want to document your trip, I think your stories can be a really fun way to let people see what you're doing. And again, this depends on your comfortability. Some people I know are not comfortable sharing that they're out of town, and I respect that. And that's a decision you have to make for yourself. But if you are fine with people knowing that you're out of town, your stories can be a really fun way to let people see what it is that you're up to. And you can just kind of give them the behind the scenes and let them see all the fun stuff that you're doing on your trip. So that can be a really easy way to still stay consistent, still stay present, in touch with your people, showing up on social media, but it's a really low-key and fun way to keep doing that. If you do want to make posts and tell people about your trip, and again, this depends on your comfortability, but if you want to make like regular posts with your trip, a couple tips that I have for you. I would not post like 6 times a day, like, oh, we're getting lunch. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. That's better for your stories. The play-by-play works better in your stories. If you want to post on your feed, I would either take photos throughout the day and then do like a recap at the end of the night or the next morning, like recap the day before, or you could even do this as a reel. So take photos or videos throughout your day. And then either at the end of the day or the next day, you could talk about the previous day, or even, every couple days you could say, here's how the last few days have gone. Here's the highlights. But instead of like randomly saying like, oh, here's a picture of my lunch. Here's this, here's that. And it's all these posts that don't make a ton of sense and probably don't get a lot of engagement. It's much easier to wait and make one post and say, here's what we did today. We got up and had this amazing breakfast, and then we went parasailing. I don't know. I went parasailing once. I was petrified. Do not recommend. Actually, it's probably a lot of fun if you don't have like the fear of heights that I do, but I did not enjoy parasailing. And then we, hung out on the beach for a while, and then we got dressed up and had a really fun dinner. And then you have pictures from each of those things and you post them all. Why this works better is that there's more for people to respond to. The storytelling format really draws people in, and also you can give enough detail and enough context that we're following. A lot of times, some people may have missed that you're on vacation. When there's a random sandwich, we're like, I don't know what to do with this. But when there's a story saying we had lunch at this amazing place, this sandwich was so unique, it was blah, 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 now people can engage with it. And now it just feels more worthwhile. So instead of like slapping up random updates without a lot of context, save it and give like an end of the day summary. And be mindful of how many photos you share. Only like your closest people are going to look through 1 million photos from your trip. I would highly suggest that you kind of break it up. And this is why I like the summaries throughout your trip. You can also wait till you get home and do the same thing. But you don't want to upload like 65 vacation photos. People are not going to look through that. So be selective and just pick the highlights and tell it like a story and over explain so that people can follow what they're seeing, whether they know a lot about your trip or not. And just remember, even if you've posted every detail of your trip, not everyone saw that. So over-explain, and that way people will know how to engage with it. When people don't understand what they're seeing, they will not engage with it. It's really important that you give more context than you think that you need to. And then one last thing I want to mention, please, if you're on vacation and people know that, do not respond to every comment and every message immediately. I mean, I guess I'm curious. This is where I wish I was live so I could ask if you guys agree with me. But I personally find that very off-putting. If I know you're on a trip, I don't want you responding to me in 2 seconds. I don't want you responding to my comment in 2 seconds. I want you living your life and enjoying your trip. And I know I don't know what you're doing. Like you might be in the car on the way to lunch or whatever and just happen to be scrolling at the time. I understand that. But I just think that people want you to relax and unplug and enjoy your trip. And it almost comes across as a little bit weird if you are completely available instantly when I know that you're on vacation with your family. So put your phone down. If you've decided to work a little bit, that's fine, but decide ahead of time when you're going to work. If you are on a fun trip with family or friends, be present. Don't be on your phone the whole time. Those messages can wait. They can wait until the evening when you get back to the hotel and you want to respond. Like there is plenty of time to get caught up on that kind of stuff, okay? Do not put pressure on yourself to be always available when you're on your trip, because then you're going to get home and you're probably going to regret not being present in the moment with your family and friends on your trip. And honestly, the people that you responded to right away, some of them might even think it's weird that you responded right away. So you think you're doing this thing to make yourself look even better to your customers, but they might even think it's a little bit weird. So promise me, even if you decide you are going to work some on your trip, if it's a trip for fun with family and friends, be present with your family and friends. Put your phone down. If you need to work, do it, early in the morning or while everyone else is napping or, those little pockets of time. But do not let your phone and your business dominate your trip, okay? It is not worth it. Okay, I hope this has helped you. I hope that you have some fun trips planned coming up and that this has kind of helped you get some clarity around what you should and shouldn't be doing with your business while you're on these trips. I hope this episode inspires you to go take action on something you have been overthinking. As much as I wish you could, you cannot think your way to success, so promise me you're going to go take some action today. Head over to overthinkingentrepreneur.com to find all the cool stuff I've made for you over the years, like my free guide to getting more social media engagement and my Facebook group, Dynamite Entrepreneurs, which has a free course on social media basics.